With the NFL draft in the rearview mirror, and we have a couple days for everything to kind of for the dust to settle, we're starting to hear a little bit more about the teams that wanted to move. The leaks are coming out on what was offered up to various teams to move up and down in the draft. And, I think the Vikings and Giants picks or trade packages were off, have been leaked now to the New England Patriots to try to move up to 3 for Drake May.
Mm-hmm.
It was Minnesota allegedly offered 11, 23, a 2025 first round pick, and another pick, but they wanted a second. And that's where the Patriots like, no, we're not going to take that. We'll just take Drake May. The Giants wanted to swap. I think
they wanted a second back.
They wanted a second round pick in return. Yeah. So they wanted number 3 and a second round pick in the future. And New England's like, no, we're good. We're going to sit here. And then the Giants, I think it was 2 firsts and something else, just kind of sprinkled in there. And New England said, no, we're out. We're good. We're just going to take Drake May and go.
That's not quite Bryce Young territory. So yeah,
because look, the Bears got DJ Moore. And this year's number 1.
And then, what was it, 2 seconds and a third?
Yeah. So they didn't want to move there.
No.
But we are also hearing about some teams and what they were offered and what shopping was going to go on. Adam Schefter went on the Pat McAfee show, and he dropped this one that is raising a lot of eyebrows around the NFL.
And the truth is the Commanders, the 2 quarterbacks they had in consideration at 2 were Jaden Daniels and J.J. McCarthy. So Drake May wasn't going to. He just wasn't going to. He's going to go 3 to New England. But back to Harbaugh a second. What's interesting about that is what would have been really cool, and there were other teams that were thinking that this would have been cool, if Jim Harbaugh believed in J.J. McCarthy as the best quarterback in this draft class, as he said, as the best quarterback in the history of Michigan football, as the man who had the best pro day of any quarterback he's ever seen. Why not go take that quarterback at 5 and go trade Justin Herbert? And you could have traded Justin Herbert for, I'm going to make this up off the top of my head, 4 ones. 4 ones.
Okay.
Right?
Just off the top of my head.
And you know what? I wasn't the only one that had the idea. The Chargers couldn't do it because the cap charge for this year would have been about $64 million. And all the new money in his contract was coming due. And I think the Patriots and the Vikings had the same idea because both teams reached out to the Chargers to inquire about Justin Herbert and were flat out rejected before there could be any talk. So they thought the same thing that I did. Like, hey, you like J.J. McCarthy so much? Go pick him and trade us Justin Herbert. But they never even considered it.
See, that's interesting where this conversation is taking, that the Chargers were entertaining trading Justin Herbert. It seems like teams were calling to say, hey, you love J.J. McCarthy, we'll take Herbert off your hands. And the Chargers said, no, we're not doing it. So it wasn't like they were floating Justin Herbert as trade bait, because it would have been a $65 million cap hit this year for the Chargers to get rid of Justin Herbert.
But you take the call because you look at the math behind it and you weigh those opportunities. You do this with everyone.
Well, that's exactly
Patrick Mahomes is the only person in the league that you don't do that with.
But you do. You do, because remember, John Lynch called Bill Belichick and said, what's it going to take to get Tom Brady? And he said, nothing you can offer. How about Jimmy Garoppolo? And that's how the San Francisco 49ers ended up getting Jimmy G. Was they lobbed that call because remember all the rumors were, hey, Brady's getting long in the tooth. Are the Patriots going to be willing to move off him? They give that call, and Belichick's like, no, we're not going to send him back home to the Bay Area. But you can take Jimmy Garoppolo off our hands, and you can do that right now. You take those calls every single time, and because you never know what doors are going to open up off of it.
But even as it pertains to Herbert, you take that call and you have that conversation, because you look at how the Chargers are set up right now financially, and they are in it. Whether it's Bosa, whether it's Mac, whether it's Herbert, they have so much money committed to the very top with a new coach coming in. What does Harbaugh do? Does he take over teams that are already built, or does he start from scratch and build them?
He has taken a lot of teams from scratch. The Niners were not, when he took over the Niners, they weren't that. They
weren't stripped down for parts, but they
yeah.
were not what they would end up being.
Absolutely.
He likes to build in his vision, not take over. He's not a cook that takes over a meal halfway through.
But I think he likes the nuts and bolts of what this roster has.
Sure.
Because he comes in already with an established quarterback. The offensive line, you just need to keep those guys healthy is the big one moving forward. You have an elite pass rusher. You have an elite safety, and Derwin James got to stay healthy. But with all of those guys, it comes with major cap hits. And if you look at it just for this year alone, Bosa's got a $26 million hit. Mack has got a $26 million or $25.5 million hit. Derwin James is at 19.8. Herbert is at 19.3. Those are 4 high-priced guys that you have right off the top. And so, of course, they're going to be sitting there and they're going to be looking at any and all options to improve this roster. They're not that far off. I still am really apprehensive to see what they are thinking at wide receiver and what they can do at the wide receiver position, because they haven't remedied that still.
No.
I mean, you look at, they got Ladd McConkey, so you have a slot. In Ladd McConkey, which they picked up with their second round pick, he can stretch you vertically too. He's fast, but he's not a big body every down target.
Quentin Johnson is, but he was not good last year.
No, he wasn't.
Probably one of the biggest disappointments from last year's draft.
And then they got Brendan Rice in the 7th round as a 7th round pick.
Have you seen the video of that pick?
No.
It's crushing. So Brendan Rice was the reason he wasn't really around. He was at a funeral for his best friend.
Oh yeah, I did see that.
Yeah, he was he was giving the eulogy at his best friend's funeral and took the call outside of the funeral home. Like that's a tough place to be. But he stays in L.A. And look, I like Rice. I thought he was really solid at SC, but I don't see him as being a number 1 guy. And don't get me wrong, the lineage is tremendous, but he struggles, I think, with the regular, but he excels in the spectacular. Like he had some absolutely insane out of frame, out of range catches that you were like, oh my God. But the down to down stuff isn't the guy that I think you look at to build your wide receiver core on.
And one thing that I guess Chargers do have that they can look at is you're playing in the AFC West, where the Broncos and the Raiders are still trying to figure it out, what they're going to do roster wise. I mean, neither one of them are complete by any means.
No, God, no.
And so you'd have Kansas City, and that's going to be a juggernaut for everybody in the AFC. But with the talent in the roster that they have, Harbaugh's coming in with a leg up on half of the division already.
Yeah.
And now you got to squeeze that juice out of Justin Herbert to see how much you can get out of him. With the receiving core, that it's not great right now, and they may not be done dealing before this season begins. But I found it interesting that those headlines that we're seeing are because of that clip that we just played, that they were shopping Justin Herbert, where it just kind of sounds like they answered the phone when people called because that's how you operate and that's how you do some business there. But a year or two down the road, could I see the Chargers moving off and going young at quarterback? Absolutely, because of what you outlined with the way that Jim Harbaugh builds his teams, right? He builds them, and if he can do it, and he feels like he can do it on a cheaper number, he might just pull the trigger and do the unthinkable, where you have a franchise quarterback who is young and in his prime, and he goes, no, I'm going to do it a different way. He's a weird bird. He's a very weird bird.
But he's also been successful at every single stop.
And I also, though, I think with the way that Harbaugh and Greg Roman used Andrew Luck at Stanford, it could be really fun offense for Herbert to operate in with Greg Roman.
It's fair.
Yeah.